Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT07, and BT07 offers us lots of new and powerful cards to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck that I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be the Three Musketeers deck. Or it's not necessarily more of a Three Musketeers deck, it's more of a Beelstarmon, because she's the only Three Musketeer we're actually going to be running, because her ability to just let us use our options more efficiently is just that good of a Swiss Army knife of a card, because we have multiple different ways on trying to fill up our trash quickly and efficiently to be able to start hard playing her over and over again, and even recycle her to be able to use her over and over again. So this is going to be a really interesting deck just because, well, it's more focused on what she's trying to do. So without further ado, onto the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of DemiMeramon. So DemiMeramon is still just one of the better generic Digitamas that we have to be working with, because it's on delete inheritable ability states that we get to draw 1 card and trash 1 card from our hand. So drawing 1 card from our deck is really good, allowing us to see more cards, and then discarding is also really good because we get to selectively put cards into our trash, not only helping fill up our trash, but specifically helping fill up our trash with the cards that we want there to be able to set up our Beelstarmon as easily and efficiently as we possibly can. And then the 5th Digitama could really be anything you want it to be. I'm just going to be running 1 copy of Tsunomon just because we do have some discard-based synergies that we want to be playing around with, and Tsunomon interacts with that. So its inheritable ability states that during your turn once per turn, when you trash a card from your hand using one of your card effects, then you get to draw a card. So it's effectively trying to replace one or some of the cards that you're going to be discarding. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Impmon. So this is the BT02 version of Impmon, and this card is going to be one of the fastest ways that we have to try to fill up our trash on our rookie level. So its on delete ability states that we get to trash the top 3 cards of our deck, so that way we could try to fill up our trash as quickly as we possibly can for, again, our Beelstarmon to be online as efficiently as it possibly could be. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Gabumon. So this is the BT02 version of Gabumon, and it's doing something very similar to DemiMeramon, where we're trying to take advantage of its inheritable on-delete ability to be able to draw 2 cards and discard 1 card from our hand. So this is, again, really good because it's supporting the fact that we want to draw cards out of our deck and help selectively fill up our trash for our Beelstarmon. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Impmon. So this is the BT06 version of Impmon, and this Impmon has a really good on-play ability that's letting us recycle our high-level Digimon. So its on-play ability states that you may trash 1 card from your hand, and if we do, we get to return 1 Digimon with 7 Great Demon Lords or 3 Musketeers in their type from our trash back to our hand. So we just discard a card, and then we get to replace the card that we discard essentially with a Beelstarmon or Beelzemon from our trash, and that's just allowing us to be able to reuse our cards over and over again for additional value. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Ginkakumon Promote. So Ginkakumon Promote is a really decent card just for its rush ability. So the rush ability just lets the card swing the turn it comes into play, and we have different ways that we want to try to use this card. So we could either use this off of our level 3s, in terms of evolution, or we could even digivolve it off of our level 4, but most of the time we're going to want to discard it to put it into our trash, so one of our options that Beelstarmon can use can be able to res it, so that way we could swing with the rush ability right away. And we don't necessarily care about its on-play ability because it'll never trigger, because that's not what we're trying to do with this card, and it's just in here for the rush ability alone. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of eyesmon Scatter Mode. So eyesmon Scatter Mode is going to be the Lichpin new card that's going to help accelerate this deck even further, just because its on-delete ability states that we get to draw 3 cards and then trash 2 cards from our hand. So this is a really decent level of just seeing lots of additional cards and trying to help fill up our trash. So if we build the perfect stack of DemiMeramon, Gabumon, and Eisomon, then we're going to be drawing 6 cards and discarding 4. So that's just a lot of cards that you're seeing all at once, and a lot of cards that you're filling up in your trash all at once when this Digimon gets deleted, and we have multiple different ways of trying to delete this Digimon to be able to get this ability off with. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Eisomon. So Eisomon just plays off of Scatter Mode because this is a really good card that we want to be discarding if we have a Scatter Mode in our trash, because this card allows us to play it for free when it's discarded. So the whole point is we're, again, going to try to make a very powerful Eisomon turn where we're trying to line up our Scatter Mode to be deleted, draw lots of cards, discard some cards, and one of the cards that we could be discarding is Eisomon, so that way we could play him for free to apply lots of additional pressure onto the opponent, just because, well, free value is good value for just spawning a Digimon for doing literally nothing different than what the deck was trying to do. And then on top of that, he has an additional ability that makes him an even stronger level 4 to be playing around with, just for sitting on the field, where during your turn, for each Eisomon Scatter Mode that's in our trash, then this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP, so the more Scatter Modes that we have, the stronger this card becomes, and, well, that's just, again, making him a really good card to be using overall. And then we're not really playing any level 5s because we don't really need any level 5s. You could tech the deck to incorporate some, but again, I'm just not even bothering, and we're just trying to focus on our level 6s and our level 4s and below. So as a result, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Beelzemon. So Beelzemon is a card that interacts with our Impmons because, well, we're already playing our Impmons for our Beelstarmon, and we're already trying to fill up our trash, so it just makes sense to try to incorporate Beelzemon as just an additional level 6 that we could possibly use. So he has this ability where, while we have 10 or more cards in our trash, we get to Digivolve him on top of an Impmon for 4 and ignore the rest of his Digivolution requirements. So again, we're just going from our level 3 right up to our level 6, which is really, really powerful level of warp for literally paying no additional cost to evolving into him. And then he has a pretty decent when Digivolving ability where we get to delete one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon, which is most of the time going to pick off some of their anti-meta cards that they could be running to try to stop some of our plays, or try to stop some of their plays from advancing by trying to pick off like Pokemon or some of their hybrids that are just chilling on the field for whatever reason, making him just a really good control type tool to be using for the deck that's fitting on theme with what we're trying to do. And then as far as what we're actually trying to do, next I'm going to be running 4 copies of Beelstarmon. So Beelstarmon is going to be the main card of the deck that we want to use, just because her on-play ability is that powerful, where we get to return 1 option card with a memory cost of 7 from our trash back to our hand. Then we get to use 1 option from our hand that costs 7 without paying its memory cost. So basically we get to use whatever option we want in our trash that's going to be costing 7. We have lots of really powerful ones for free, and the more cards that are in our trash, the easier it is to play Beelstarmon because of her other ability, where when you play this card from your hand, we get to reduce the play cost by 1 for each 3 Musketeer and each option card that costs 7 in our trash. So the more cards that we have in our trash that work with this ability, the cheaper she'll become, and the longer the game goes, the easier it'll be to repeatedly hard play Beelstarmon after Beelstarmon. And then the last Digimon of the deck is going to be the only level 7 of the deck, and that's going to be 2 copies of Omnimon Zwart. So Omnimon Zwart is a very decent card just because he's helping with the deck's overall game plan. So his when Digivolving ability lets us trash the top 3 cards of our deck to try to add more cards into our deck, into our trash for Beelstarmon and for Beelzemon, and then we get to play up to 2 purple or black Digimon with a play cost of 8 or less from our trash for free. So we could try to res that Ginkakumon promote to be more aggressive with. We could try to res a scatter mode to try to line up scatter mode plays. There's a lot of cards that we want to res and reuse, so that just makes Zwart's revival ability really, really valuable. And then on top of that, he has a nice when attacking ability where we get to return 1 level 6 Digimon from his inheritable source to our hand to delete one of the opponent's unsuspended Digimon that has a play cost of 12 or less. The removal is really nice, but we're just looking to try to use this card to be able to add Beelstarmon back to our hand, so that way we have another way of trying to reuse the card to be able to hard play and get another option ability off. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Gwalt Schwarmer. So Gwalt Schwarmer is going to be one of those 3 Musketeer options where we could use it regardless of its color as long as we have 3 Musketeers on our field. So what this card is doing is it allows us to delete all Digimon with a play cost of 7 or less to try to help control the field if the opponent is trying to go wide enough. So this is going to be the board wipe of the deck that Beelstarmon can use because, well, she's a 3 Musketeer, allowing us to use this option. And then it has the nice security ability of adding this card to our hand, so that way we can figure out what is the best way to use this card. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Trump Sword. So Trump Sword is going to be another 7-costed option for Beelstarmon to use because it's a really strong option card with the main ability to delete one of the opponent's unsuspended Digimon. So if they just played a Digimon or they didn't swing and they Digivolved and passed the turn, then we could take advantage of that opportunity to be able to delete it with Trump Sword. And then on top of that, it's also a really solid security threat, where its security ability activates its main, so if their Digimon has the ability to multi-swing, this card could possibly delete that Digimon, preventing either further swings from that Digimon or another Digimon that just might be chilling on the field. But as far as the main control option card that we're going to use to try to pick up off the opponent's Digimon, we're going to be running 4 copies of Fly Bullet just because I feel like Fly Bullet is a little bit better and more consistent of a removal option. So yes, this is another 3 Musketeer option where it has that ability to play itself regardless of its color requirements. If we have a 3 Musketeers on our field, but it's already purple, so that doesn't matter, and its main ability allows us to delete one of the opponent's level 6 or lower Digimon, with its security ability activating its main for some very solid control. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Calling from the Darkness. So Calling from the Darkness is a new option that came out with BT07, and even though it's not a 7-costed option card, it's still a really good option card for us to use to try to self-delete our Digimon and or add cards from our trash back to our hands that we want to see. So its main ability states that we get to delete one of our Digimon, and then we get to return 2 purple Digimon from our trash to our hand. So this allows us to trigger our eyesmon scatter mode in case he lives through security checks, and we need to delete him in order to see more cards. And on top of that, if we don't have any Digimon on our field to delete, then we could still use this option card to add 2 cards back to our hand, which is really, really powerful, just because this deck kind of lacks some card draw, and this is a solid way of essentially drawing cards just from our trash to be able to reuse. And then it has the security ability of adding it to our hand, so we can figure out when and how is the best time to use this card. But speaking of additional cards to try to delete our eyesmon scatter mode, I'm also going to be running 2 copies of Deathclaw just because Deathclaw is another control tool that we could use to try to pick apart the opponent's low-level Digimon. So for the low cost of 1, which means we can't use it with Beelstarmon and it doesn't count towards Beelstarmon, we get to delete one of our Digimon to delete one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon, just again for some extra control with the security ability of deleting one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Nailbone. So Nailbone is another 7-costed option card for Beelstarmon to use, and this is a really good card to revive lots of Digimon, creating a wide field at the same time. So its main ability states we get to play 1 purple level 3 and 1 purple level 4 Digimon from our trash for free, but we don't get their on-play effects, and we're just trying to use this to spawn a wide field to apply lots of additional pressure onto the opponent. So we could use this to spawn Ginkakumon Promote to be able to use his rush ability to swing wide away with, or we could use this to revive a eyesmon scatter mode to be able to see some additional cards. So it's just a really good card to be using overall, and the fact that it also brings out a level 3 means that we could try to line up an Impmon play to be able to use with our Beelzemon. And then it even has a nice security ability where we get to play a level 4 or lower Digimon from our trash for free. But again, we don't get its on-play effects set, and the card that we want to see and reuse more often than not is going to be our eyesmon scatter mode with this style of effect. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Happy Bullet Showering. So Happy Bullet Showering is another 3 Musketeer option card, so we could use it in combination with our Beelstarmon. Otherwise, we're just going to be discarding it for the most part. And then on top of it, it's again another control type tool for the deck to use, because its main ability states we get to delete all of the opponent's Digimon with the lowest DP. So if they just have a whole bunch of level 3s with 2000 DP on the field, just sitting there not really doing anything, then Happy Bullet Showering is going to be a good card to clean all of them up without deleting our own Digimon, so it's a little bit different than Gwalt Schwarmer. And then on top of that, it's again another security threat where its security ability activates its main, so that way we could try to delete some Digimon off the opponent's field. And then lastly, onto our tamers, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Matt Ishida. So Matt Ishida is going to be the deck's dedicated memory fixing tamer, so when our memory is ever less than 3 at the start of our turn, he'll just always hard set us to 3, so we could try to play our cards a little bit more efficiently than we normally would. And then his on-play ability is actually what we're trying to gain out of the card. We get to return 1 purple Digimon or 1 purple option card from our trash back to our hand, and this is a good card to allow us to grab a Beelstarmon to be able to use again and again with. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Analog Youth. So Analog Youth is another card that's helping with the overall consistency and setup of what the deck is trying to do. So for the low cost of 2 memory, we get to use its on-play ability to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, add 1 Digimon card among them into our hand, and then trash the rest. So again, it's just looking for our parts and pieces while helping fill up our trash to set up our Beelstarmon and possibly our Beelzemon. And then its all turns ability is also pretty decent, where when one of our level 5 or higher Digimon with a Digivolution source is deleted, we get to suspend this tamer, and if we do, we get to gain 1 memory and hatch a Digiegg in an empty space in our raising area. So he's just a decent card to be using, more so for the first ability, the on-play ability, rather than the second, but the second could still come up and be pretty useful. And then there's still just a lot of room for customization and flexibility in terms of how you want to build it, what you want to focus on, and the other tech and tools that you could use inside of it. So we do have a slew of really good level 3 Digimon that we could use, all for various different purposes. So Tapirmon is an on-delete that helps us draw cards, which again, Beelstarmon has a lack of card draw. And on top of that, we also have an anti-meta card in the form of Gabumon to shut off the opponent's memory manipulating shenanigans. We even have Soundbirdmon to do our own memory manipulating shenanigans with, while discarding our options to fill up our trash to make our Beelstarmon plays even more efficient. Then on top of that, we do have Labramon as another solid way of drawing and discarding with its on-play ability. And speaking of drawing and discarding, we even have Gabumon that has a nice when attacking ability that does that ability. So if our Digimon lives, then we get to use this ability over and over again. And then we also have Dracmon, just to try to use and reuse some of our options that cost 1 or 7, which are primarily the ones that we're going to want to be playing around with. Then we do have some really solid level 4s that we could also think about using. So if you do want a blocker in the deck, then we could think about running Mechanorimon, because we're just going to hard play him and forget about him and hope he just does his job at trying to stop enough aggression to buy us some time for our deck to set up and do what it needs to do. Then if you want to run another blocker, we also have some purple blockers to be able to revive off of the Nailbone. So we have Vialmon and Devimon as 2 possible purple blockers to think about using. Then if you want, you could also run Deputymon if you're running more 3 Musketeers, because his on-play ability is looking for our 3 Musketeers, and we could even use him to warp Digivolve into our other level 6 3 Musketeer Digimon with. Then we do have a whole bunch of discard synergy that we could think about running depending on the types of cards that you want to be using. So we could run Skullgreymon to try to add retaliation, we could use Nidhoggmon to gain some additional memory, we could use Orochimon to draw a card. There's just, again, a lot of different cards that we could use that want to be discarded, so we could gain some benefit for the act of us discarding cards, which is something we're already trying to do. And then we do have some spicy level 6s that we could think about using in the form of avengekidmon. So avengekidmon, even though he does seem counterintuitive, it's not very hard for us to fill up our trash, especially if our trash is already full of Digimon we want to recycle and reuse. And we do have lots of good ways of already doing that, and we could still store some option cards in our hand to avoid the full impact of avengekidmon's ability. So we could use him basically as an alternative to Beelstarmon, where if we don't have a Beelstarmon, we could use avengekidmon to fill up our deck and have a cheap card to hard play, on top of the fact that he also is adding some extra removal into the deck for hard playing him, even though we're not deleting a 3 Musketeer. And then taking a note from Security Control, we also have Magnetdramon as a good way to try to help recover cards, because we're running lots of options that have very powerful security abilities, and we want to trigger those while filling up our trash, and recovering is just a really solid way of doing so. Then we do have a whole bunch of good level 7s that we could think about using. The best one is going to be Omnimon Zwart Defeat, just because, well, Omnimon Zwart Defeat has his own security ability, so he's his own security threat on top of his when digivolving ability to interact with tamers as a form of tamer removal, and he even has his own on-delete ability of deleting one of the opponent's Digimon, making him a very sizable threat. But again, you could think about running some other level 7s if you really wanted to. One of the other ones I'm going to be highlighting is also going to be Tsunomon, because we could actually play a hybrid-based package because, well, we're just trying to fill up our trash, and the hybrids also kind of want to interact with that discard and draw sub-theme, so we could even build Beelstarmon incorporating some hybrids. Then we do have some off-color option cards we could think about running, so we could run Tidal Wave, we could run Cocytus Breath, we could run a Blue Tamer to be able to utilize those cards just because they're options that cost 7, so Beelstarmon will be able to use them. Then we do have Gigastorm as another new card from BT07 to try to delete multiple Digimon off the field to, again, add to the overall control aspect of the deck, and we could, again, run a Red Tamer to better incorporate this card with. Then we do have some memory boosts that we could run, so we could run a purple memory boost to try to dig out our purple Digimon, or we could run grave memory boost to try to reuse our Digimon while having a memory boost to pop for some additional memory at a later turn. Then we do have some really good alternative tamers that we could run, so we could try to run Mimi just because she's a really cheap and efficient tamer, and she could gain us memory for us using our options, or effectively take away memory for the opponent for them using their options. We also have Sora and Mimi as some additional ways to try to gain some memory, just because if the opponent doesn't have any level 4 or lower Digimon on their field, then we could gain some additional memory, and because we have lots of different control type tools, we could try to force this ability more often than not, and on top of that, we also have the ability to just draw and discard when our purple Digimon is attacking, making this another really good card at trying to dig through our cards. And then, as I stated before, if you want to try to incorporate Tsunomon, then we also have Koichi that we could possibly run to run some purple hybrids with. You could even think about splashing some other colors and run other hybrid packages in the deck as well, all depending on how creative you can be and what you want to try to use. But for the most part, this is just my interpretation of a really solid core or foundation for what a Beelstarmon 3 Musketeers deck is trying to do. I do understand that sideboards is kind of an up in the air zone, and there is avengekidmon that we could be afraid of as a result, making the deck a little bit less viable just because, well, a lot of decks would sideboard in avengekidmon to try to counteract the Beelstarmon with, just because they can, because they have the sideboard deck space to do so with. So there is that factor into the deck's overall playability, but I don't necessarily think that's going to kill the deck outright, just because we still have lots of different ways and tech and tools that we can incorporate to adapt the deck in various different directions depending on how the meta actually shapes out. And that's kind of also why I'm leaning a little bit more towards using Beelzemon as a good supporting level 6, just because if we are under an avengekidmon, then we could start relying and using Beelzemon while we're trying to reload and refill our trash to be able to play Beelstarmon efficiently again. But I still think it's going to be a very fun and very viable deck, just because what it's doing at its core is very powerful, allowing us to reuse our options and reuse our Beelstarmons. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.